Welcome to the Business is Good podcast with Chris Young, president of the Good Place Institute, helping leaders build and steward thriving organizations where people flourish, communities prosper, and the organization is economically regenerative. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg. Remember that jubilant feeling you had when you walked out of that final test of your 4-year college degree, thinking to yourself, I don't ever want to have to learn anything ever again. Unfortunately, learning is never done. And fortunately, when you study and learn things in your job, they actually have immediate applicability. Chris Young today is going to talk about how training, education, and development are all part of a kingdom company creating a good place to work. So Chris, why is ongoing training and development such a big deal in the Good Place operating system, or as you call it, GPOS? I think Good Place operating system might be easier to remember, but why is that so important?
A few different reasons, Jim. Let's go all the way back to why Good Place operating system exists in the first place. And it's because God is the God of creation. He's the purposer and he's the designer. And we're all created in his image. So this idea of training, education, and development, you might even say it's a great commission maneuver to continue to bring out the gifts that were imbued into people, their image-bearing qualities that we're training and educating and developing them into their full potential. So there's a biblical foundation for this, number one. Number two, there's 3 main aims of all Good Place organizations. The first one has to do with people, where we're providing opportunity and encouragement to grow people to their full potential. And number 2 is communities, where we're building up good places in the communities where we live and work. And then the third is being economically regenerative, like you mentioned. But that's why it's so important. There's a biblical foundation for the way God imaged humans in this training, education, and development concept. And it's a significant way that we are achieving one of the 3 main aims or outcomes of a Good Place organization, because that's what God cares about. These are success criteria in his economy.
Training and development costs money, and a lot of people already spend a lot of money hiring somebody, and they just want to get them to back. They just want to get them to work. But when you really spend time training and developing somebody, it's got some real payoff, doesn't it? I mean, real transformation happens when you give people education, and it's not just information. Like you get the employee handbook that first day you give them to work, and you expect people like they're going to read that all day. The most horrible day of any first job is to read the employee handbook. You're like, really? Can I do something practical today? So, Chris, what kind of real transformation? What does it look like in a good place? A good place to work. We're a good place organization. How does education, I'm having a hard time getting this out, but why is education, training, development so key in creating a good place to work?
Yeah. So we have definitions for each of these words. So they're not just one big, large concept.
Okay. All right. Oh, I'm thinking it's training, development, and education. So tell me about it. What do you mean?
No, that's good. So training, so here would be our definition of training. It's training people to do the best job they can do. So training on job skills.
Okay.
And within the Good Place operating system, I can share with you how do we lead to that. It's through managing systems, which is another episode that we did a few weeks ago. But the other is education. So we're training people to do the best job that they can do. We're educating them as to why that job is important and how it fits with all the other jobs to collectively accomplish the shared purpose of the organization. And then lastly, we want to develop or grow their full potential as a human, personally, professionally, and you could even get into the wellness categories. Are they flourishing vocationally and financially and spiritually, and all of those things, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later in this episode. But that's why it's so important, because as individuals grow in their full potential, training, education, and development wise, the byproduct of that is the organization grows as well.
So I love what you just said. So what you just said is that we train people to be able to do their job really well, but we actually tell them why it matters. We tell them that's the educated. We tell them why what they do is important, but then you're not just teaching them. Obviously, all organizations are doing that, so they make money on that person. They're helping them make money. And for them to make money and for the organization to make money. But I love the last part, developing. You're developing people for life. Not so that they can stay working for you for life, but that they can be a better person. They can learn to be a better person. A lot of companies don't really think about it that way, Chris. Why does a good place organization, why is this so important in defining a good place to work?
Yeah. And part of it, and this is a little bit different way of thinking about it, and I would love, if anybody has questions or wants to challenge this, more than open to do this. Again, we believe that this is a great commission maneuver. So you shared it. It's a way of developing people. It's developing them into their full human capacities, their full image-bearing qualities. We're trying to train their giftedness, right? We're trying to bring out more and more of those image-bearing qualities so that they can be the fullest human that they can be. John 10:10, Jesus said, I came that you could have life and life to the full. So we desire people, humans, to flourish and reach their fullest human potential. And we all know who was the fullest human.
Jesus.
It was Jesus.
Fullest, right.
Right? So if you're talking church language, you're discipling people to be more like Jesus. And if you're talking plain glass language, you're developing people's full potential to become the fullest human that they can be.
Whether they're working for you or not. I mean, that's what you're saying. Because you're investing in people for all of their future, not just their future at a good place organization.
Right. Well, if I could throw in a little bit of a biblical story or concept so I love to ask this two questions. When Jesus pulled those disciples out of their vocation and said, hey, come follow me, and he spent life on life with them for about 3 years or so, teaching and training and modeling what life in the kingdom looks like. Sounds like discipleship, right? The question I love to ask is, hey, when did they get who he was? Because, obviously he was a rabbi, and it was an honor to follow the rabbi, but they thought he was going to overthrow Rome and, be a military hero and all that sort of thing. Like, when did they get it? So a common answer we usually get is, well, somewhere along the way, or maybe at the end, very end when he left and he sent the Holy Spirit. I'm like, that's awesome. When did he start discipling them?
The first day.
So you mean to tell me Jesus was discipling people who got it and didn't get it yet?
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, organizational leader, that's your calling, to disciple people into their fullest human potential, teaching them what life in the kingdom looks like in this environment where we spend the majority of our waking hours. People who get it and don't get it. And we want everyone to come work here so that we can train and educate and develop them into a flourishing, full human person.
And the beauty of that is when they leave your good place organization to go to another organization, for whatever reason, they take all of that learning, training, education, that development into the next place to help create that place, turn that place into a good place organization.
Absolutely. Or they take it into their church, or they take it into their relationships, or they take it into their family. I mean, these are, other than or they take it into their community because they're learning job skills that can enhance the community and bring more good place into the communities where they spend some of their days outside of work, right?
So how do you build a learning culture that involves education and development without overwhelming people? Because people are still, even though they're expected to learn, they also are expected to get their jobs done. So how do you put all that together?
Yeah, so it is the way that good place organizations are meant to be designed. So yes, there's probably training classes and courses, and we segment training, mainly training, as well as education, into 3 categories. Hey, at the organizational level, what should everybody know? At the systems or department level, what should everybody in that department know? And at your role level, what should everybody in that role know or know how to do, et cetera, et cetera. But the other part is it should be designed into the everyday work. So we also mentioned key outcomes and results and how to introduce stewardship concepts. So everyone knows what they're supposed to achieve, the expectations of success in a good place organization that indicate that you're fulfilling its purpose. But we don't just stop because, We don't just stop at, well, you're green in that area, so you're fine, or you're red in that area, you're off track, and we need to fix something. No, we want to move beyond the data or beyond the status of performance and really learn why that person is producing what they're producing, why that system is producing what it's producing. So we invite everybody's best ideas, the people that are working in those systems, to learn alongside, to diagnose, to root cause analysis, to understand intimately what that system is producing and understand intimately the people that are within that system and how they're getting trained, educated, and developed as a full human. And then lastly, suggesting improvements based on that learning. And so again, you asked me a question in a previous episode about culture. That's designing an organization that's intended to build a certain kind of culture. And one of the aspects is, yes, it's a learning culture, but it gets reinforced. It's how we live. It's an immersive situation versus just going to a training class and regurgitating, answers on a test.
So give us an example of somebody who actually, of an organization that actually shifted to a training, education, development culture, and how that impacted the atmosphere and probably the profitability of that business.
Yeah. Well, the example that I was just trying to figure out which example to give you today, right? This example was one that this client, we went in and applied some managing systems processes to their operations, right? We call it purpose to people. What's the purpose of operations? Those key outcomes and results. What's the system that produces those? Who lives within that system and works within that system? So all of that informs their job description. And then that job description informs what we call a role-based training matrix. So first of all, we put the structure together that people can thrive. Well, this particular client, they had an operation at their headquarters, which was quite large, and then they bought another facility. And there was going to be an operational facility. And they said, well, how are we going to recruit the leadership team? How are we going to recruit members of that team that are operational and production oriented? How are we going to recruit and onboard them? How are we going to operate the facility? So they had all of this in place when they bought the brand new facility. So the idea of having a job description and onboarding training, it was already in place. And it completely changed the efficiency and effectiveness of starting up a brand new operation. And it was to me, because I'm a systems guy and I love training, education, and development, it was an exciting thing to hear because they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They didn't have to wonder. They knew exactly what they were looking for. They knew exactly how to onboard them. They knew exactly how to share with those individuals expectations for success, especially the team leader, and how they were going to be measured as far as productivity and developing their members of their team. It completely changed their operational culture.
I love that story, and it's a success story. But so often, and let me be a little contrary for a second, so often investing in people is messy because people are messy. And development, as you talk about development, you're talking about developing the person to be a better human being, a flourishing human being. But developing people is messy and it's time consuming. And a lot of times organizations don't take time to do it because, hey, we got to make money and development costs money. So talk to me about how development ties into flourishing of people, which then really blesses them personally and also blesses the organization, because I think they're all tied together.
They are all tied together. And you basically just described the three main aims of a good place organization. It's not one or the other. There might be some seasonality to each of those three main aims, right? I mean, if you're a startup, you're probably not spending a lot of time documenting systems. You're trying to get off the ground and et cetera, et cetera. But really, those are meant to be concentric success criteria that happen together. And I'll use a consultative word, they happen synergistically. They don't they're not siloed from one another. So if we're training and developing people, that should be leading to building up good places in the communities where we live and work, which should be leading to economic regeneration. And if we're being economically regenerative, it should lead to valuing and developing more people, and should lead to building up more good places in the communities where we work. So they are synergistic in nature. And that, that's biblical success criteria, because those are the things that God cares about: people, places, and stewardship. And so you have to kind of have a holistic mindset. We would call it like a holistically integrated kingdom mindset as to what success in an organization actually looks like, because it's not one or the other, it's all three.
And the bottom line, when you do all of that, people flourish, and your organization. When your people are flourishing, your organization will flourish. And we encourage you. You got to check us out online. We're guaranteeing that some of the stuff we're talking about on this podcast and previous episodes, it's out of the box. It's out of the bubble. It's out of the box thinking. And it's stuff that really works. Goodplaceinstitute.com. Thank you, Chris Young, for a great conversation today.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
And
Love being with you, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today on the Business is Good podcast with Chris Young of the Good Place Institute. And if today's conversation has encouraged, challenged you, we'd love to hear about it. Be sure to subscribe to hearing this podcast on your favorite podcast platform or our YouTube channel, and share this episode. And for more resources on how to build a good place or to connect with our team, visit goodplaceinstitute.com.